Right now, behind closed doors in conference rooms most fans will never see, the future of the WNBA is hanging by a thread. And I'm not exaggerating. What I'm about to tell you could change everything you thought you knew about the 2026 season, about your favorite team, about Caitlin Clark, about the Indiana Fever, about whether there's even going to be a season to watch. Because here's the thing nobody is telling you. The WNBA isn't just facing a potential lockout. That would almost be simpler. No, what's coming is something far more chaotic, far more unpredictable, and far more dangerous to the league's biggest stars. We're talking about a compressed nightmare of a timeline that could leave championship-caliber rosters scrambling. We're talking about superstars having less than 3 weeks to learn their new teammates' names, let alone their playing styles. We're talking about an off-season so rushed, so crammed together, so absolutely suffocating, that by the time opening night arrives, some teams won't even feel like teams. They'll feel like strangers wearing matching jerseys. And the Indiana Fever, Caitlin Clark's team, the franchise that became the most watched show in women's basketball, might look completely unrecognizable. Now, take a breath, because we're going deep on this one. I'm going to break down exactly what's happening right now in those CBA negotiations. I'm going to show you the specific numbers the players' union is demanding and why the league has reportedly gone silent on some of the most important requests. I'm going to reveal why the most popular teams in the WNBA, yes, including the Fever, the Aces, and the Liberty, are about to get punished for their own success with brutal road schedules designed to squeeze every dollar out of their star power. And then, I'm going to explain why all of this, every single piece of this puzzle, is pointing toward one terrifying possibility. The 30th anniversary season of the WNBA might not start on time. In fact, I'd bet money on it. Let's go. First, let's talk about what the WNBA doesn't want you to focus on: the calendar. Because when you actually look at the dates, when you map out what has to happen and when it has to happen, you start to realize something unsettling. There's almost no way this works. Here's the situation. The current collective bargaining agreement between the players and the league is set to expire. And for there to be any chance at all of a smooth off-season, the new CBA needs to be finalized by early February. That's not a nice-to-have deadline. That's the ink needs to literally be dry on the paper deadline. Why? Because if the CBA isn't done by then, everything that comes after gets pushed back. Free agency can't start until the new rules are in place. And right now, the earliest realistic window for free agency to open is early March. Already, you can feel the squeeze happening. But wait, it gets worse. The WNBA draft is scheduled for April 13th. Training camps are set to open on April 19th. And opening night, May 8th. Now let me ask you something. If free agency doesn't start until early March, and the draft is April 13th, and training camp opens 6 days later, how much time does that actually leave for teams to sign players, make trades, prepare for the expansion draft, develop chemistry, install new systems, and get ready for a nationally televised regular season? The answer? Almost none. We're talking about cramming free agency, the expansion draft, and the lottery into a single chaotic month. Teams will be making roster decisions at warp speed. Players will be flying across the country to meet with organizations they've never seriously considered before. Contracts will be signed with barely any time for due diligence. And then, boom, training camp opens. New players will have roughly 3 weeks. That's it. 3 weeks to learn their coach's terminology. 3 weeks to figure out who their point guard likes to dish to on the pick and roll. 3 weeks to understand their role. For comparison, most NBA teams get 2 months. So what does this mean in practical terms? It means the first few weeks of the 2026 WNBA season could look ugly, really ugly, even for the best teams, even for contenders. Because basketball isn't just about talent, it's about timing. It's about trust. It's about knowing where your teammate is going to be before she even takes a step. And that kind of connection, It can't be built in 21 days. This isn't speculation. This is math. And the math is brutal. But here's where things get really interesting, and where most fans completely miss the bigger picture. Because while everyone's focused on whether there will be a lockout or a strike, the real story is what happens even if they reach a deal. Let me say that again so it really sinks in. Even if there's no lockout, even if the players don't strike, even if both sides shake hands and smile for the cameras, the 2026 season is still in serious trouble. Why? Because of what's happening in the negotiating room right now. The players' union isn't just asking for incremental improvements. They're not coming in with small requests and hoping the league meets them halfway. No, the players are swinging for the fences. They're demanding a complete restructuring of how money flows in this league. Let's break down the numbers. First, revenue share. The players' union is pushing for 30% of the league's gross revenue. 30%. Now, for context, this is a significant jump. It signals that players believe they're the product. They're the reason fans tune in. They're the reason arenas sell out. And they want to be compensated accordingly. Second, the salary cap. Right now, WNBA salary caps are, let's call them modest. But the union wants that cap raised to approximately $10 million per team. That's not just a bump, it's a statement. It would fundamentally change how franchises build rosters, how they prioritize veterans versus rookies, how they allocate resources. Third, and this is the one that's turning heads, player pay. The union is proposing a new supermax salary of $249,000 and a league minimum of $66,000. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, wait, that still seems low compared to the NBA. And you're right, but here's what matters. These numbers represent a massive leap forward for WNBA players. A leap that many superstars have been fighting for since the league began. A leap that would change lives, literally change lives. For women who have sacrificed their bodies, their summers overseas, their time with their families, all to play the sport they love at the highest level. So the players aren't just negotiating for dollars, they're negotiating for dignity. And that's why these talks are so tense. That's why both sides are dug in. That's why, even though owners reportedly have no interest in a lockout, the process is moving at a snail's pace. Speaking of which, let's talk about what's really going on behind those closed doors. Because according to multiple sources, the league has been unresponsive, not hostile, not combative, just silent on certain issues the owners and league officials have. Simply stopped engaging with the players' proposals. And one of the biggest sticking points? Destination rules. Without getting too deep into the legal weeds, destination rules are policies that limit where players can sign and how they can move between teams. The union wants some of these rules eliminated. They want players to have more freedom, more control over their careers. And the league? So far, they're not biting. This isn't a small issue. This is the kind of disagreement that can drag negotiations out for weeks, months. And when you've only got until early February before the whole off-season timeline starts collapsing, that silence is deafening. Now, here's where I need to talk about something most WNBA coverage is ignoring. It's called the popularity penalty. And if you're a fan of the Indiana Fever, the Las Vegas Aces, or the New York Liberty, you need to hear this. Because the league's most popular teams, the ones that drive ratings, sell out arenas, and generate the most buzz, are reportedly being set up for the most grueling schedules in 2026. Let me explain how this works. When the WNBA builds its schedule, it has to balance a lot of factors. TV contracts, arena availability, travel logistics. But there's one factor that's becoming increasingly dominant: revenue maximization. And how do you maximize revenue? You put the biggest draws on the road as often as possible. Why? Because when Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever walk into a rival arena, that building sells out. When the Aces bring their championship pedigree to a mid-market city, ticket prices spike. When the Liberty, fresh off their dominant seasons, Visit smaller markets. Those franchises make more money in a single night than they might in a normal month. So what does the league do? They load those teams up with road games, heavy road trips, back-to-back-to-backs in different time zones. Brutal travel schedules designed to extract maximum value from their star power. On the surface, this might seem like a compliment. Your team is so popular, everyone wants to see you. But here's the dark side. Playing on the road is exhausting. It wears down bodies. It disrupts rhythm. It makes it harder to develop chemistry, especially if your roster just got reshuffled in a chaotic free agency period. So the very teams that fans are most excited to watch, they're the ones being set up to struggle. It's almost poetic in its cruelty. And speaking of the schedule, let's talk about opening night for just a second, because right now, the plan is for the Las Vegas Aces to face the Phoenix Mercury to kick off the 2026 season. A rematch, a statement game, the kind of primetime matchup the league loves to promote. But here's the problem. If the CBA negotiations drag out, if free agency gets pushed back, if training camps get compressed, that opening night game might feature two teams that barely know themselves. Two rosters full of new faces trying to execute systems they learned last week. Two coaches hoping their players remember the plays. That's not a showcase. That's a scrimmage with cameras. All right, I've thrown a lot at you. Let's pause for a second and recap where we are. The 2026 WNBA offseason is facing a logistical nightmare. The CBA needs to be finalized by early February for the timeline to work. Free agency can't start until March. The expansion draft, lottery, and major roster moves all have to happen in a compressed window. Training camps open April 19th. Opening night is May 8th. And even if everything goes perfectly, even if both sides agree tomorrow, teams will have almost no time to build chemistry before the season starts. On top of that, the Players' Union is asking for historic financial improvements, 30% revenue share, a $10 million salary cap, supermax salaries of nearly $250,000. And the league has been notably silent on some of the most important proposals, especially around destination rules and player movement. Meanwhile, the most popular teams in the league, the teams fans care about most, are being scheduled for brutal road trips that could sabotage their early season performance. And the players, they voted to authorize a strike back in December, not because they wanted to stop playing, but because they wanted leverage, a seat at the table, a voice in their own futures. So where does that leave us? It leaves us here, at this moment, with the 30th anniversary season of the WNBA hanging in the balance. Both sides say they're committed to playing. Owners reportedly have no interest in a lockout. Players view the strike authorization as a measure of caution rather than a plan to walk away. But commitments don't mean much when the calendar is this tight. And even if they avoid the worst-case scenario, the chaos is already baked in. Now, I told you at the beginning of this video that we were going to talk about Caitlin Clark, about the Indiana Fever, about the possibility that when the 2026 season starts, that team might look completely different. And I haven't forgotten that promise. Because everything I just laid out, the compressed timeline, the rush free agency, the lack of chemistry, the brutal scheduling, all of it points toward one conclusion. The Fever's 2026 roster is going to change. Maybe a little, maybe a lot, but change is coming. And in an off-season this chaotic, change doesn't happen gracefully. It happens violently. It happens with surprises. It happens with players you never expected to leave suddenly signing with new teams. So what does that mean for Caitlin Clark? Is she staying in Indiana? Is the franchise going to surround her with new talent? Are we about to see a complete roster overhaul designed to maximize her generational skills? Or is the franchise about to make mistakes in a frenzy, signing players who don't fit, losing contributors they can't afford to lose, ending up with a team that's less than the sum of its parts? These questions matter, because Caitlin Clark isn't just a player. She's the face of a movement. She's the reason millions of new fans tuned into the WNBA for the first time. She's the engine driving the league's historic growth. And what happens to her team in this chaotic offseason could define the entire 2026 narrative. But that's not even the biggest question. No, the biggest question is what I'm about to reveal in part 2. Because there's something happening right now, something most people don't know, that could completely reshape how we think about this offseason. Something about the expansion draft. Something about which players are vulnerable. Something about who the Fever might lose, and what it would take to replace them. And once you understand what's really at stake, you'll see why I started this video by telling you the future of the WNBA is hanging by a thread. All right, you made it to part 2. And if you thought what I told you in part 1 was intense, buckle up, because now we're going to get into the stuff that keeps general managers awake at night. The stuff that makes agents sweat. The stuff that could literally determine whether Caitlin Clark plays alongside the same teammates next year or walks onto court in May surrounded by faces she barely recognizes. We're talking about the expansion draft. We're talking about roster protection rules. We're talking about the cold, calculated chess match that happens when a new franchise enters a league and gets to pick from existing rosters. And here's why this matters more than most fans realize. The Golden State Valkyries are coming. The WNBA's newest franchise. A team backed by the kind of resources that make other owners nervous. A front office that's going to be aggressive, hungry, and desperate to compete immediately. They're not entering this league to be patient. They're entering this league to win. And to do that, they need talent. Established talent. Players who've already proven they can perform at the highest level, which means they're going to be raiding rosters, including, potentially, the Indiana Fever's roster. Now, let's slow down and think about this for a second, because the expansion draft isn't like free agency. In free agency, a player chooses to leave. They evaluate their options, they weigh the money, they consider fit, and they make a decision. But in an expansion draft, the decision isn't theirs. Teams are allowed to protect a certain number of players. The players who aren't protected, they're exposed, vulnerable, available for the expansion team to select. And here's where it gets complicated. The Fever aren't just trying to protect Caitlin Clark. That's obvious. They're trying to protect the infrastructure around her, the veterans who understand her game, the shooters who can space the floor, the defenders who can hide her weaknesses, the chemistry that took an entire season to develop. But protection slots are limited, which means choices have to be made. Who stays? Who goes? Who's considered essential? And who's considered expendable? These decisions will be difficult in any off-season, but in an off-season this compressed, with free agency, the expansion draft, and the lottery all crammed into a single month, they're nearly impossible. General managers won't have time to carefully analyze every angle. They won't have the luxury of long conversations with agents. They won't be able to see how the dominoes fall before making their moves. They'll have to guess. And guesses, especially under pressure, lead to mistakes. Let me paint you a picture. It's early March 2026. The CBA just got signed, barely in time. Free agency officially opens. And suddenly, every team in the WNBA is scrambling. Phones are ringing. Group chats are blowing up. Players are getting calls from franchises they never expected to hear from. Meanwhile, the expansion draft is looming. The Golden State Valkyries are watching, waiting, making notes about every player who might become available. Now imagine you're the Indiana Fever's front office. You have to decide, right now, in real time, which players to lock up with new contracts and which to let test the market. You have to anticipate which of your unprotected players Golden State might target. You have to calculate whether it's worth overpaying someone just to keep them away from the expansion team. And you have to do all of this while competing with 11 other franchises for the same free agents. Oh, and don't forget, Caitlin Clark is watching too. She's watching to see if the organization is serious about winning. She's watching to see if they're going to surround her with talent or let her carry the load alone. She's watching to see if Indiana is a destination or a stepping stone. Because here's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Caitlin Clark won't be a Fever player forever by default. Her current deal will eventually expire. And when it does, she'll have options. Lots of options. Teams will line up with maximum offers. Cities will roll out the red carpet. What the Fever do in this offseason, how they handle this chaos, will send a message. Either they're a franchise committed to building a championship contender around one of the most marketable athletes on the planet, or they're a franchise that fumbled the opportunity of a generation. There is no middle ground. Now, let's zoom out for a second, because the Fever aren't the only team facing this pressure. Every franchise in the WNBA is dealing with the same compressed timeline, the same chaos, the same impossible decisions. And some of them, they're going to crack. Think about it. When you rush decisions, you make mistakes. When you make mistakes, you end up with rosters that don't fit together. When rosters don't fit together, you get bad basketball. And bad basketball early in the season, that can spiral. Losses lead to frustration. Frustration leads to finger-pointing. Finger-pointing leads to locker room tension. And before you know it, a team that was supposed to contend is fighting just to stay relevant. This is the hidden danger of the 2026 timeline. It's not just about whether the season starts on time. It's about whether the product, the actual basketball we watch, is going to be worth watching. Because here's a truth that league executives probably don't want me saying out loud. Chemistry matters more than talent. I'll say it again. Chemistry matters more than talent. You can assemble a roster full of all-stars. You can have the highest payroll in the league. You can bring in 5 players who all average double figures on their previous teams. But if those players don't know each other, if they don't trust each other, if they haven't developed the invisible connections that make great teams great, you're going to lose. A lot. And in an off-season where new players only have 3 weeks, to build those connections before opening night, we might be looking at the sloppiest start to a WNBA season in the league's entire history. Let me tell you about something called the chemistry window. This isn't official terminology. It's something coaches and scouts talk about informally, but it's real and it's crucial. The chemistry window is the amount of time a team needs, at minimum, to develop functional cohesion. Not championship-level chemistry, just basic functional. We know where each other is going to be chemistry. For most teams, that window is somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks. For weeks at the absolute minimum. Now remember what I told you earlier. Training camps open April 19th. The season tips off May 8th. That's 19 days. Not 4 weeks. Not 6 weeks. 19 days. And that's assuming training camp opens on time. If the CBA negotiations drag out, if free agency gets pushed back even further, that window shrinks. Maybe it becomes 2 weeks. Maybe it becomes 10 days. At some point, you're not even giving teams a chance. You're just throwing players together and hoping for the best. And hope is not a strategy. All right, I've been painting a pretty grim picture. And I know some of you might be thinking, is the season even going to happen? Are we looking at a lockout? A strike? The whole thing falling apart? So let's address that directly. Because despite everything I've told you, despite the chaos, the compressed timeline, the tense negotiations, there's actually reason for cautious optimism. Here's why. Both sides want this season to happen. I'm not saying that to make you feel better. I'm saying it because it's true. The owners, according to multiple reports, they have no interest in a lockout. And why would they? The WNBA is experiencing historic growth. TV ratings are up. Attendance is up. Sponsorship deals are flowing in. The last thing ownership wants is to put a pause on all that momentum. A lockout will be financial self-sabotage. And the players? Yes, they voted to authorize a strike back in December. That headline scared a lot of people. But when you dig into the details, the picture looks different. That vote wasn't a declaration of intent. It was a show of solidarity, a negotiating tactic, a way of telling the league, we're united, we're serious, and if you push us too far, we're prepared to act. It was, in the words of one source, a measure of caution rather than a definitive plan to stop playing. The players want to play. That's not even a question. These are competitors. Elite athletes who've dedicated their entire lives to basketball. Walking away from a season, especially the 30th anniversary season, would hurt them almost as much as it would hurt the league. So both sides are motivated to find a deal. But, and this is a big but, motivation doesn't guarantee results. Because even if everyone wants the same outcome, the path to getting there is treacherous. The financial demands are significant. The philosophical differences about player freedom are real, and the timeline is brutally unforgiving. So here's where we are. A lockout is unlikely. A strike is possible but improbable. Both sides are committed to making the 30th anniversary season happen. But happening and happening well are two very different things. Now, let's bring this full circle. I started this video by telling you that the future of the WNBA is hanging by a thread, and I stand by that. But I want to be clear about what I mean. I'm not saying the league is going to collapse. I'm not saying there won't be a 2026 season. I'm not doom posting or fear-mongering. What I'm saying is this. The decisions being made right now in negotiating rooms, in front offices, and locker rooms will shape the WNBA for the next decade. If the CBA negotiations produce a fair deal that compensates players appropriately and gives them reasonable freedom to control their careers, the league will attract more talent. It will become a true destination for the best basketball players on the planet. It will cement its place in the sports landscape. But if the league drags its feet, if owners remain unresponsive to key union proposals, if players feel disrespected and undervalued, the cracks will show. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year, but eventually, because athletes talk, they share information. They know which leagues treat them fairly and which leagues treat them like commodities. And the WNBA, for all its growth, all its momentum, all its exciting new stars, is still competing for talent with overseas leagues that pay substantially more. The CBA negotiation isn't just about 2026. It's about the league's long-term identity. So what happens next? Here's what we're watching for. First, the February deadline. If we hit early February and there's no CBA agreement, expect alarm bells. The timeline will start collapsing. Delays become inevitable. The pressure will ratchet up exponentially. Second, the March free agency window. Watch for chaos. Watch for surprising signings. Watch for teams making moves that don't quite make sense because they're operating under panic conditions rather than careful planning. Third, the expansion draft. See which players the Golden State Valkyries target. See which teams lose key pieces they couldn't afford to protect. This is where some of the biggest shocks will come. Fourth, opening night. Pay attention to how teams look in those first few games. Are rotations smooth? Are players in sync? Or does it feel like organized pickup basketball? Those early impressions will tell us everything about how much the compressed timeline truly cost. And finally, watch the fever. Watch what they do with their roster. Watch who they sign, who they protect, who they let go. Watch Caitlin Clark's reactions. Watch her body language in those early games. Because as much as this story is about the league as a whole, it's also about her. She's the engine of this growth. The reason casual fans tuned in, the reason ratings exploded, the reason brands are lining up to partner with the WNBA. What happens to her team this offseason matters. Not just to Fever fans, to everyone who cares about the future of women's basketball. Let me leave you with this. The WNBA is at a crossroads, not the kind of crossroads that threatens its existence. That era is long gone. The league is stable. It's growing. It's not going anywhere. But within that growth are choices, paths that lead to different futures. One path leads to a league that truly values its players. That pays them what they're worth. That gives them freedom to control their careers. That produces a kind of thrilling, high-level basketball that attracts millions of new fans every year. The other path leads to compromise, to half measures, to a league that grows just enough to survive but never quite reaches its full potential, to players who love the game but always have one eye on opportunities elsewhere. The next few months will determine which path the WNBA takes. And the crazy thing? Most fans won't even realize it's happening. They'll see headlines about free agency signings. They'll watch the draft. They'll tune into opening night and cheer for their favorite teams. But underneath all of that, beneath the spectacle and the entertainment, a battle is being fought. A battle for the soul of the league. The players are fighting for recognition, for respect, for their fair share of the pie they've worked so hard to bake. The owners are balancing growth against profitability, momentum against sustainability, short-term investments against long-term returns. And caught in the middle? Fans like you. Fans who just want to watch great basketball. Who want to cheer for Caitlin Clark and Aya Wilson and Breanna Stewart. Who want to feel that electricity when the arena lights dim and the starting lineups are announced. That's what's really at stake here. Not just contracts and revenue shares and salary caps. The experience, the joy, the magic of watching the best women's basketball players on earth compete at the highest level. That's worth fighting for. Now, before I go, I want to hear from you. What do you think about all of this? Do you think the league and the players will work things out in time? Do you think the 2026 season is going to be a disaster? Or do you think I'm overblowing concerns? And most importantly, what do you want to see happen with the Fever? Should they go all in during this chaotic free agency? Should they play it safe and protect what they have? Or should they blow it up and rebuild around Caitlin Clark with an entirely new supporting cast? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. And if this video helped you understand what's really happening behind the scenes in the WNBA, if it gave you a perspective you weren't getting from mainstream coverage, smash that subscribe button. We go deep on stories like this every week. This is the most important off-season in WNBA history. And I'm going to be covering every twist, every trade, every shocking development. You're not going to want to miss what comes next. Because what happens in the next few months, it's going to change everything.